wigs, props, sets, hair, makeup, lighting, shooting the image, post-production. It's all just me. So I'm a little busy bee. My experience when I was with a gallery, they didn't allow me to know who my collectors were. Whereas with an agent, I get to meet my collectors, I get to have conversations with them, I get to go to their homes and see the artwork sometimes. My kind of biggest revenue stream is my public art. Probably secondary to that is brand collaborations, and then competitively it would then be social media and selling to private collectors.
Hi, Claire. I'm very happy to welcome you today for a conversation about the art market. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very glad to have you as a guest speaker because in this podcast, we want to inspire artists with great tips and advice. And I'm sure your career as a full-time artist and your journey will be really inspiring. For the audience that might not know you, you're a British artist, and your practice includes photography, sculpture, and large-scale public art. In your art, nature and classical British literature and art play a very important role, as well as the female experience. We will go into that again. You exhibited at the London Art Fair at Art Basel, and recently you've been a finalist of Objectif Femmes, a photography festival dedicated to women artists that took place in Paris, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Your style opened great collaboration with brands. And you reached a community of 150K followers on Instagram. I'm mentioning these things because we'll try to cover all aspects that really make your artist profile unique, and why I believe many artists will be really interested and inspired. You reach levels that many will envy, and at the same time, I know from looking at some videos on your YouTube channel that you're really generous in sharing advice. Do you want to add anything to the presentation that I've just made, something you think is important?
I would just say that I think that the reason why I kind of feel that way inclined to share is just I have kind of made this path completely on my own, in the essence of I didn't have anybody in the art world that I knew. My parents, who are now retired, were school teachers, and I just knew I wanted to be an artist. And even though, so I did a fine art degree at Goldsmiths, which was like such an interesting experience, but I still don't feel there are many, it didn't teach you how to do that thing that you love as your full-time career. So you're kind of, you study this thing, but then it feels very closed off and unattainable to then turn it into something that is your career.
When did you know that art would be your journey?
I mean, my mum says that I was like creative from the womb. Like, I think it's just always been a part of me. And I think so many people get, I would say, caught up on the term like artist, and, you know, what accolades do you have to be an artist? But for me, I think an artist is almost like a personality type. I think like artists like inherently like feel the need to make and create and express themselves. So I think that you don't need an accolade to be an artist. I feel like I've been an artist since I was like a child, and I think I just always had that urge to like make and express myself in that way. So it was just always something that I knew I wanted to do. I was like also very kind of like academic at school, but like I did really well and kind of pursued that, but I also focused on my art, and I knew that in terms of higher education was the path I wanted to go down, because it was just the thing that, you know, sat well with me. So I got an art scholarship for well, in the UK it's like college. It's like after secondary school. So yeah, I got an art scholarship to do that. And then after that, I went and did like my foundation course, which, if you don't know, you have to do 4 years to get a BA fine art degree. So you have to do 1 year foundation where you kind of experiment and then you specialize after
Okay.
that. And then I did my 3 year fine art degree at Goldsmith. So it was just always something that was like, I just knew I wanted to do it.
Interesting. So you've been a full-time artist for 10 years now, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
So you didn't take another job before you
I
graduated.
so I graduated in 2014 and I took a job because I was like, what? I don't know what I'm going to do. What do I do? So I took a job um at an architect's firm at London Bridge, and I worked there for around 10 months. And I mean, it was, it was a perfectly good job. I just was like, it didn't really speak to me. And I was still working on my art practice, and I sold all of my degree show work to a collector in Qatar. And I was like, oh, I felt like I just owed it to myself to like try,
Give it a chance.
give it a chance. So yeah, I quit my job then in 2015 and became self-employed. And then yeah, this is my 10-year anniversary of being.
Congratulations. Interest It's interesting because I was about to ask you, when did you think, when did the statement of your work and the themes that you're today working on,
Mhm.
does it come from your university years or has it developed afterwards?
I think that obviously like my practice has like evolved and developed over that time in terms of confidence and materials and experimentation. But I would actually say that the kind of the themes and the messaging has kind of always been the same. I think like my voice has always been the same, and then it's just the how that has then come out has changed. Because at university, my work was primarily like steel sculptures and painting. So I was in like metal work a lot, and I was like making large scale kind of sculptures, and the sculptures were always like my height and weight, so they were kind of like objects of me in space, and I was kind of interested in the female form and how we go through the world and explore traversing different spaces and how we occupy space and like our strength and fragility. So I was always making the work kind of, it was kind of difficult for me. So there was an element of like labor in that. And so when my practice, I always loved photography and I always used photography kind of as like a sketch. It was always this thing that I took photos that then led to another idea. They led to a sculpture, they led to a painting. But then after a while, I kind of found that I thought that the photography was interesting enough. And so what happened was is that because my body had always been like a marker point in terms of sculpture and painting, it just became a natural evolution and vehicle that my body then was then used in the photography. So it was never really about me per se. And when I look at the images, I feel very detached from them being
You. Yeah.
and even now I think sometimes people still, if unless they've looked into my work, some people don't realize that they are all me, because I still get messages from people like, oh, if you want me to be like the next model, like who's this model, and I'm like, it's all me.
No, that's very intriguing about your work, and it's very interesting to understand that that was actually one of my questions to see to know how did you decide to be the model in your photographs? But
Yeah.
it's interesting to know the process that it's an evolution of you were the model of your sculptures
Yeah.
and you took the first material that you had to study the woman body. So
Yeah.
very interesting. So it's the evolution. In one of your interview you said something about if you had a magic stick, you would make people more empathetic. Is is it something is it your mission to the world? Is it the messaging that you want to bring?
I mean, I think that like I'm a massive empath, which is sometimes to my own detriment. Like I just take on other people's emotions. But I mean, I think that's how I'm able to make these different characters and stories. But I think that empathy goes a long way in, I think people feel so, I think it's very easy to feel like detached in the world that we live in now in a digital way. And I think it's very interesting how people are able to be so disgusting online because they're able to hide behind something,
A screen, yes.
hide behind a screen, hide behind a facade. And I think that I would never be able to do that because I'm just too empathetic towards people, because I always think, oh, well, like, what if that were me? And I think empathy can go so far in terms of storytelling and in terms of like how people might see the world and understand the world. And I think for me, art is all about creating conversations and creating new worlds in which people might view things differently. So I think that empathy goes a long way in that.
And what's the main messaging of your work? How do you pitch? This might be a very entrepreneurial world, but
My elevator
yeah,
pitch.
to pitch.
Um, I would say that my work is about re-giving a voice to the female gaze and the female experience. I think that for so long we have been cast in very like specific roles, whether that be like through mythology, whether that be through like terminology that is still used today, oh, she's an old bag, hag, witch, we're like the sirens luring men to their deaths, like Medusa. Like it's never really like a super positive accolade. Even if you're sort of like a virgin put on a pedestal, you're this like prized mare in essence. So in one hand, it's that my work is about a new voice and a new experience for the female voice. And then on the other hand, I think in general, it's about storytelling and experience. So whether that's a portrait or whether that's a public art installation or whether that's a poem, it's about giving people the opportunity to step into a new story and have a new experience.
And your work also includes a lot of elements from nature. So how do you relate both like women and nature?
I mean, for me, they feel like one of the same. I always think of nature as being female. I think it's because it's like
Interesting.
because it's like life and its growth and its birth and
True.
evolution. I kind of feel like those are female characteristics. Not that men don't create things, but I think in a kind of biological sense, I think I see women and nature as kind of being like symbiotic. And I think both can be incredibly fragile and both can be incredibly strong and resilient. And I think that there's a lot of symbolism within nature that I think I'm able to tap into and use to explore what I'm looking at in these different narratives. Likewise, I tap a lot into kind of as you mentioned earlier, like classical literature, but also things like folklore and like myths and legends, and botanicals come up a lot in that as
True.
well. So it just has always been like a natural turning point, because I think I do like I think sometimes often my work can be both joyful and dark, and I like that kind of
Intersection.
that juxtaposition. So I think that nature has the macabre because it has like the beauty, but it also has the decay. So I think that I like to be able to play with that.
Yeah, thank you for giving us a broader perspective on your artistic statement. Now, like you know because I know you shared about the journey of an artist and how frightening it can be for creative people to decide well, I'm gonna really give it a chance,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be a full-time artist. You went through this journey. What are maybe the three mistakes that you wouldn't do if you had to do it all again?
I think you have to like let go of a lot of like preconceived ideas. And what I mean by that is one thing I felt that was really pushed at art school, and I by no means think you have to go to art school, was this kind of starving artist aesthetic, and that if you put yourself out there, you're kind of like a sellout in some kind of essence, that you should just be good and someone should discover you. Like that doesn't happen. You need to set your expectation out that if you are not, in my opinion, from my experience, if you are not willing to back yourself and put yourself out there and, you know, sing and dance about who you are, then no one else will. Like, you have to do it first. Like, kind of, you know, be cringe. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
And you learned that the hard way, or
100%.
yeah.
100%. Like I had to kind of, I mean, I think I always was willing to put the work in. I wasn't expecting someone just to kind of like scoop me up, but like it doesn't have to be commercial to promote yourself. Like people need to know, like you know, you want to share your work, right? You want people to see it. You want people to hear your voice. So like you have to be willing to kind of stick your neck out and be like, hi, I'm over here. I think also people do just get really I wouldn't like pigeonhole myself and like kind of get too stuck in like having to do like one thing. I think that it's so important to continue to like play and experiment, even if you think like this is the direction. There are many directions to success, and I think sometimes people get stuck in like a rut of like, oh, I must win a competition, or I must be with a gallery, or I must do that. I think you just need to start, really, and just, you know, start making and sharing.
And what have been the key moments in your art journey as a professional artist? So maybe in the last 12 years, that really changed the course of your journey and made it possible for you to live off your art practice.
So when I quit my job, I then became represented by a gallery, which at the time was like perfect for me. That very specific relationship I outgrew it after about 3 years, which is when my kind of contract came to an end. But at the time, it was like a really great milestone for me. And I learned so much. Like I did some fairs. I had several solo shows in London. Like it was I kind of learned a lot about how the art world at the time, which again I actually think has changed a lot since then, functioned. Then I would say the next milestone, I had like a period of time where I then like represented myself, because I just
Okay.
needed to like step away from. I think it was really important for me to like hone in on exactly what I wanted my career to be, because I think in the early stages, when something exciting like that happens, like a gallery or something like that, it's very easy to be like pushed in a direction and like then get trapped in an essence. And like I kind of came away from it thinking like, yes, I have learned a lot, but what does Claire want? What do I want my future career to look like? So I spent some time just really deciding that. And then in 2020, which obviously you would think would be a bad time,
Indeed.
I then started chatting with Maureen Tongi, who's the CEO of MTR, and we just really kind of hit it off in terms of how we saw the art world, our voice, what we wanted to achieve, and just kind of connected. And so then I became represented as an agent at MTR, which was like another massive change, pivotal moment, milestone for me, because the difference between being kind of represented and just solely working with a gallery, I would say, is that for me, the working with MT Art meant I was able to work in like parallel with what I was doing. So what I was doing when I had no one representing me after the gallery and then
Hmm.
representation, it was like I finally had like someone in my court.
Hmm.
I could still do all of the stuff that I was already doing, but then I had this as like a team that I could then bounce ideas off and work with.
Can you briefly explain to the audience what is what is it to have an art agent?
In essence, it's very similar to the model that like actors have had for a while, but it's just not been something that's been done in the art world. And I think it has been like quite in a super positive way, like disruptive, because it's kind of given the autonomy back to the artist. So in essence, what it means is that I have an agent who represents me, and they will bring me different opportunities that I can then pitch for. Equally, if now when an opportunity comes through into my inbox, I can pass that over to the team so that I can then have someone who can help me project manage that, someone who can deal with the contract, because previously I was dealing with all of the legal stuff myself, all of the project managing myself. So this way, it allows me to really focus on the art so much more than I ever have been able to. So it's a really like healthy, like symbiotic relationship where we're bringing each other different things, and like we've done so many like amazing projects together. I think maybe like another milestone after being represented by MT Art was doing Field of Dreams in Battersea Power Station, which is my largest public art installation to date in the Turbine Hall. But it just felt very kind of monumental. I feel like little Claire would have been very like, wow, you know.
Amazing. Yeah, I can imagine that knowing that so many people will see your art, even if they don't purchase art, even if they don't go to museums,
Yeah,
that is probably very intense.
yeah.
Just to understand, so before, when you were working on your own or with the gallery,
Mhm.
you never did any public art. It really or brand collaboration. It really started off when you join MT Art, and this is really what an agent can bring
Yes,
compared to galleries
I was doing some brand collaborations,
already.
but
Okay.
no public art. And the public art really started with MTR. And I do think now, I think because of the way that MTR has kind of shaken things up, I think that um a lot of the gallery models have really updated and really changed the way that they're doing things. Ultimately, I would say, like, for me, this is what's really worked. I'm very kind of like independent, and I have very kind of like clear goals and aspirations. So for me, an agent worked super well, but like you do get out what you put in essence.
It's an interpersonal relation, so you still have to, yeah,
And
get involved.
that doesn't suit everybody. Having any kind of representation, whether it be with a gallery or with an agent, I think it's really important to find what fits you as an artist and what's best there to support your career. I like to like foster the relationships that I build, because like it is just you and it is only your reputation. So I really like building the relationships with the people that I work with, and then go back to working with them on different things, and like kind of comes full circle. You did something little here, but now you're doing something much bigger with that person a couple of years later. It's really special. And I think that can work in either model, but I think you just have to find what suits you and what
You.
relationships suit you.
No, in what you explain, I really like basically there were three phases, and
Mhm.
I hope there will be many more. But first you were represented by a traditional gallery,
Yeah.
then you took some time to think about what you really wanted.
Mhm.
And as an entrepreneur, I can really relate to that moment where you need to take a step back because it's intense and you need to think about what's next,
Yeah.
what's the ambition. And that led you to when you met Marine,
Yeah.
you thought, okay, that's the great opportunity for me. Maybe if you would have met her like a couple of years earlier,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have had the
No, I totally.
thinking process that yes, that can work for me.
Mhm.
So I think this is really interesting. You told us about what happened, and maybe can you share about your dream for the next years? What would be a big dream that's in 10 years the Claire of today will be like, wow.
I really would like to do some permanent public art pieces that are there all the time. These are next level in terms of budget, and also because, so like when we do, say, a public art installation, so I did Cornucopia for Art After Dark in Westminster in Leicester Square, and so like to do that, I have to make sure the materials will withstand, the amount of time it's going to be up. So say a week or 2 weeks or a month. And you have to have, obviously, council permission, all of the health and safety. And that, requires a certain amount of budget. But then in terms of when you're then looking at something that is permanent, the types of materials that you're going to use are different, the permissions are different, who owns the land, and also it's aspirational and exciting, but it's quite complicated, which is why they don't happen frequently.
So again, what is really interesting in your profile is you are doing various things to promote your art. So you're doing brand collaborations, you're selling to private collectors, and you are doing public art. In terms of stream of revenues, how does it organize? Do you still earn the majority of your revenues from the sales to private collectors?
So I would say that my kind of biggest revenue stream is my public art. Probably secondary to that is brand collaborations, and then competitively it would then be social media and selling to private collectors. They're kind of like, I would say, like 4 revenue streams. The difference, I would say, between a public art and a brand collaboration would be, public art would be, an artwork which is in a public space which people can experience for free, bringing art into the public, whereas a brand collaboration might be something like the project I did for Wedgwood, which was where they were launching a brand new collection, and I designed a large artwork for them that sat online and in their stores. So that's more of a like brand collaboration type art commission. So I would say it's public art, then like art commissions, like brand led, and then I would say social media and then selling to collectors are then kind of maybe equal.
How many sales of your works to private collectors do you make a year, for instance? Because again, today, many artists in the traditional model of galleries is to sell works to private collectors. So it's interesting for me to understand today, for an artist that has reached your level, how many works per year do you sell to private collectors?
So I think what's interesting to caveat here is also prints versus editions, so materials versus price point. So
interesting. Let's dig into that.
Because I think it's not like just a one size fits all question. So like when I was represented by a gallery, I did paper prints, and they were of a much higher edition, say like 50, like a limited edition of 50 paper prints. So, you might sell 70, 80, 90 prints in a year, for example, but I might be selling the print for £150.
Yeah, the amount was much smaller.
And
yes.
also the edition was higher, so then the value of that is lower because more people, the kind of availability of it is much higher. I haven't sold paper prints in ages, but because my work is like very like object based, and even when I'm making photography, it's sculptural, it's performative. I like the artwork when I then have it as a physical artwork to be more of an object. So I print, I've got one behind me here, I've got 2 behind me. I print directly onto aluminium, and then it's like tray framed in oak, so it's like very, like it's an object. With the largest one of my group of when I print the artwork, it's a 1 of 1, which is the one that like most of like my higher end collectors will
It's
go.
a unique work.
It's
It becomes a unique work, even if it's photography.
Yes, exactly. So it's a 1 of 1. It's the unique work. It's the most kind of collectible. And then of the other 3 or sometimes 2 sizes that I offer, it's just 1 of 3. So often there's only ever 6 or 7 artworks of each artwork. And materials and how much it costs me to make and facilitate, it's very kind of bespoke and artisan. So then the price point is much higher. So like now, you know, a 1 of 1 might be like 7-8K just for a 1 of 1. So then in terms of like selling to collectors, it's now not a quantity thing. Do you know what I mean? Because also I'm attached to my work, and I, you know, it is an income source, but also I want the work to be with people who love it, and I want it to be in the right collections and in the right homes. So now during the course of a year, it might be 10 to 20 artworks as opposed to 100
before. Yes, I understand. And can you tell us about one sale that was really important for you, that the encounter with the collector was really meaningful?
I sold a work last year during when I had my exhibition at Battersea Power Station to a wonderful collector. Well, actually, there's 2 great collectors I'll mention, called Nadia. We'd had several meetings at Battersea, kind of, you know, experiencing the work, and she just kind of like fell in love with kind of like the narrative and like everything that was being explored. So like when it's really nice to be able to interact with your collectors, because that's one thing. And again, this is not the same for every gallery, but my experience when I was with a gallery, they didn't allow me to know who my collectors were. Their fear is that obviously if you know who the collector is, then the collector will buy directly from you and not through the gallery. Whereas with an agent, I get to meet my collectors, I get to have conversations with them, I get to go to their homes and see the artwork sometimes. Another great collector who lives by the Royal Albert Hall, his place is insane. It's amazing. And I've actually made him several like bespoke commissions now for specific rooms in his house, because I went and saw the space.
Wow.
And that's like really special.
Yeah, because it's a relation that develops, and yeah, he really understands
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now maybe we can dig a little bit more in brand collaborations, because I know that many artists would dream about doing collaborations,
Yeah.
and especially the one with Intercontinental is quite impressive. So you designed the whole like hotel or the rooms.
Yeah. So what happened is that the collaboration started in 2020 and then lasted 3 years, because we never expected it to
Amazing.
happen that way, but it just was
Because the hotel is so long to build, no? Also?
so what happened is that the original collaboration was for Intercontinental Park Lane, and they were celebrating their anniversary of global travel. And so because obviously people weren't really traveling and weren't able to stay in the hotels, I created a public artwork that wrapped around the outside of the hotel and was projected onto the hotel. So this was the first thing that we did together. Then when things opened back up the next year, I then had the opportunity to redesign one of the suites and create like the Claire Luxton, like a high-end, like immersive art experience in the suite.
Crazy.
So we did cushions, cocktails, artworks, flower arrangements, scarves and pocket squares for all of the staff who like work in the hotel, menus, afternoon tea. Like it was like a full kind of like
Experience. Yes.
experience. I even picked like the fragrance of the room and like the hand wash and all of, so it was like a full curated experience, and that was really successful. So then that was in London. So then the year after that, we then rolled it out to Dubai, New York, Singapore, and then the year after that, I then finally, this was the last thing we did together, I did a rooftop bar experience in Sydney, Australia. So it was like, yeah, it just kind of
Crazy. Indeed, it
Yeah.
looks like a great project. And because these projects seem very long in terms of time,
Yeah.
how do you get paid? Like, do you get paid upfront something and then at the end? Because it's an important matter for artists. Like, how do you manage when revenue comes in?
It really varies from project to project. Different companies have different payment terms, different companies have different onboarding terms.
Are you able to like set up your rules and say,
I mean, because I'm doing all of this through my agent.
yeah, the agent?
So what typically happens would be like 50% upfront, 50% on completion, typically.
Hmm.
And often payment terms are something like 30 days. That's typically for like the secondary payment, the secondary 50%. Sometimes we're able to negotiate the first payment is just upfront, as in like straight away. But often just through the way things work, like if you are working with a big company, they have to onboard like the accountancy, and that might take a few weeks anyway. So often it is kind of like a 30-day payment window, but it's typically something along the lines of 50% upfront, 50% on completion. Or alternatively, sometimes the way a project budget is broken down is that you have fees in terms of, you know, what we're getting paid, but then you also have budget for like actually making the project. So like,
True.
you know, the materials, the insurances, the buildings, the fabrication. So sometimes we insist that having to be paid up front, because that's going to no one other than it literally comes in and goes straight back out again. And then the fees are then dealt with separately. So it does vary depending on what the project is, but it's typically like a half and half, or it's sometimes it's split three, like 40 30 30, or
It's practical, but very useful, I believe, for artists who would be really in the process of negotiating even a more humble contract. But just to know that that's how the market usually works.
It would be very rare to like get all the money up front.
No, for sure, for sure, for sure. Now, if we move to your online presence and your social media outreach, I mentioned in the introduction that you reached 150K followers. And you also have a YouTube channel. And you mentioned in one of your latest videos that artists are not content creators.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. And I really love this sentence.
Yeah.
And I would really love to dig into that, what it really means, because I wonder whether when you are producing content for Instagram or for YouTube, are you putting yourself a hat of content creator, or is it the extension of your practice? Many artists, and especially many female artists that I know, are very afraid when they start posting on social media that they become the products and that people would come because they're beautiful or they're showing the backstage of the studio. So how do you approach that?
I think just to touch on the final point you said about worrying about becoming the product, I think to an extent you really have to detach from that, because you can't control how people are going to perceive you. And I think that that's a real thing that you have to just kind of put to one side, because you really, obviously you can present yourself in a way that you feel comfortable, but how that is then interpreted by a mass, you can't control. So I think that you almost have to just put that to one side. But I feel really passionately that artists are not content creators. We do have a full workload because the power of being able to share your work and democratize art through social media is incredibly powerful. We all know the pitfalls and downsides of social media that they present and the toxic nature that it can be, but it is also a very valuable tool to artists that I think that we should utilize. I don't see myself as a content creator. I don't feel like I'm making content. I see it as documentation. So I see it as like an insight into my, it's my studio diary, it's my studio journal, it's a gallery. So it's like, it's a portfolio for my finished artworks, a place for them to live and sit other than my website or in physical locations that people might not be able to access. It's then a way of sharing other things that, again, people might not be able to come to my exhibition in Paris. So let me share it and document it here. And then it's also a documentation of process. When I did Field of Dreams in Battersea Power Station, we paid for Rich, who's an amazing videographer, to actually just like come along and more documentary style, just film it, because I normally am always filming myself, which is a large workload for sure.
I imagine. Like your videos are incredible. They're really poetic, really beautiful. So I was wondering, do you have help or do you have a team doing this?
No, it's just me.
Also the editing?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a one woman show. It's the same for my photography. Everything I do is so like all of the wigs, props, sets, hair, makeup, lighting, shooting the image, post-production, it's all just me. So I'm a little busy bee, shall we say. But yeah, so for that project in Battersea Power Station, we had a videographer, and he just like organically filmed like what was happening, and it was so, I feel so grateful to like have those videos to look back on. And yes, I shared them, but like for me personally, just having this like documentation of what I've done is really special, because you can get so involved and it's so personal when you're working on a project and you're so in it that you kind of forget these milestones. And I mean, I'm the worst at giving myself a pat on the back and being like, oh, well done.
Good job.
I'm like, okay, all right, next thing. And so it's nice. I think it is documentation, and I'm back to the kind of like becoming the product. I don't see it for me as a bad thing, because I've spent this 10 years building like my brand, and like I am synonymous with my artwork. Like I am, the conversation of like, how much can you detach the art from the artist? I mean, I don't really want to get into that conversation because I don't feel like I have a full artist an answer myself. But I am inherently like part of my work, and like my brand. When someone comes to do a public art project, they're working with me, and when I'm doing my self-portraits, it is me, and like the narratives that I'm telling are from my visual world and perspective. So I think that I think it can be a real help and credential for you to embody your brand. I think it can, it can really bolster your presence in essence.
Your visibility, for sure. Would you say that your social media have been key in your success or are key in your success?
A lot of my like initial brand collaborations and work came through visibility on social media. I mean, I think some of it is then now through press, like news articles, and then also just, I guess, the art community. But like, when you do now like a larger scale project, then like potentially commission that, see those projects online and see the reach, and then go, oh, we want to do something like that. It allows that visibility and communication. I think the pitfall to not fall into is to make work for social media. I don't want to be getting up and think, if I want to work on a new self-portrait, I don't want to be making it for Instagram. And then if I feel like it's something that is valuable and I want to share, I will then share that online as part of my documentation, as part of my portfolio. But
150K followers seems like a very large amount to reach. Is there a threshold of follower that really, from where it's really started to boost your visibility?
I would say probably from like about 70, 80,000 followers. Yeah. And I think the thing is Instagram has changed a lot in terms
Indeed.
of like how it works and numbers. And I think for me, sure, I would love my social media to continue to grow, because the more people I can talk to through my art, then, you know, that's amazing and valuable to me. But I'm much more now focused on like the actual audience that I have being engaged. I want to have people who love art and who are interested in art and interested in artistic processes, or are artists themselves, or fellow women, or men who love this kind of like interesting conversation on the female gaze. Like I'm interested in that, nurturing what is already there.
And how much time do you spend on your social media? Like, just to give a rough estimate.
Do I spend on the apps, or how much time I spend on making the work for the
I mean, probably a bit of everything. Maybe if you can split for the audience to understand, like, indeed, filming and content creation. Then you mentioned engaging with the audience. That also takes time.
Yeah.
Like rough estimates.
If I'm doing all platforms, so if I'm in any given week, if I were putting out at least a post on Instagram and a YouTube video, and then replicating that in some way on TikTok, I'm spending at least 2 days a week on social media content.
3 days a week?
2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days.
Probably 2 days a week. Then whenever I post, say I do a post on Instagram, I will then engage with that post for at least an hour, 2 hours after it's posted, because that's like the most kind of important time. I like responding to people. I want to have conversations. It's not a there you go and then, you know,
No, for sure. No, but it's really practical tips that are very useful, just to remind artists that all this time that you spend on marketing, visibility is important, and that can represent, just as you said, 2 days a week. And that's a lot.
I try to really hone in on like what works for me. So if I'm shooting a portrait, whilst it is additional effort at the time, I'll try and make the effort to just set up my filming camera and just record, and try not to be perfectionist about it and think like, oh, am I going to use that? Just because I'm already doing the thing, I'm doing this anyway, I might as well document it. And then if I have all of this footage that I can then use and put into something in a way that I can then share. But it works the best for me when I have a real kind of laid out plan in terms of what I'm organically going to be doing that week. Am I working on a public art project? Am I working on an exhibition? Am I shooting a new portrait? Then we'll think from that, what do I want to document and what do I want to share from that? As opposed to going, what do I want to make for social media? I'll look at what am I doing, and then what could I take from that could be shared.
Clear and very important to remind, and that goes along with what you've just said, like not making art, or let's say content, for social media, but rather documenting your art practice, and that becomes content for your socials. I think this is a really important point, and an interesting angle. Indeed, it helps you take a step back and not think I'm the product, I'm putting myself as the main character of my social media, but rather it's a documentation of my work as an artist. You said that you also earn revenue from social media. When did it started? How does it work?
That's probably like other than selling my artworks, that's probably one of my earliest income streams, would be through social media. I've been working with Adobe doing different social media collabs for about 8 years, but I've been like an ambassador of them for about 5 years. But it's not just them, it's also other brands. I've done stuff with like Swarovski and L'Oreal and more like art-led brands. I've done stuff for like Ascot and NHS. They will come to me with, you know, an idea or a product, but I am picky with this. Like, hey, do you want to do these like socks? And I'm like, no. No. But like, you know, I mean, for me, the reason why Adobe as example worked so well is because I'm organically
using that product.
the
Yes,
product
for sure.
every day. I was long before I even knew that it was a possibility to collaborate with them. That's really fun, and it's like I did portrait and a video portrait for Hotel Chocolat earlier in the year because they had this thing that they wanted to kind of promote, but I kind of came up with this like portrait concept, and that's what we did. So like if it works for kind of like my narrative and like what I want to do, and it's just fun. It's fun to like for it to not always be like so serious and to kind of like play and they work with a brand in that way. So that's really interesting.
So if I may say, it's rather brand collaborations on social media rather than like you're not earning money from ads or like no. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Important to
Yeah.
understand the difference.
I've like never like paid for anything on social media. Like I haven't paid for like ads or any.
No, for sure. But some content creators at some point start earning revenues because, you know, the ads that are shown while people are watching, this is giving them revenues. So this is not what you mentioned when you said social media.
Yeah.
Clear. I wanted to discuss the evolutions of the art market. You've been in the market for what, 15 years since you started your degree. How did you see it evolve? You're also in an agency, so a model that is very disruptive. What changed, especially after the pandemic, and how do you see it? What trends would be interesting for artists to have in mind?
I would say that previously the art world, and it still is, but it was very closed off, and like it is very like particular in hierarchy and what it deems is good and not good. But I think that the model is definitely like more fluid and more open to women, because it really wasn't. I mean, I'm still in like the 10 to 15% of women who are doing public art. The rest is still men. And still in terms of like institutions, like I don't mean more modern gallery institutions, but in terms of like, you know, old institutional galleries, it's still really small, the amount of like female artists that are shown in comparison to male artists. Things like public art and brand collaborations are where the traditionalists are now wanting to go, because they see that artists are, you know, taking things in their own stead and being creative, and it doesn't have to just be an artwork hung on a white wall. It can look like lots of very different things, and I think that has changed quite a lot, and I think that's exciting, and I hope it continues to be lots of different forms that art can take and lots of different ways in which we can express our voices.
Interesting. Yes. The last part of this interview, I wanted to focus on advice that you would have for artists. I know you often express that being an artist is indeed a lonely work. And so maybe can you share a few tips on how to fight this loneliness, or how much you're making the work environment the one that you want to be is helping?
You know, I'm not like, I haven't like completed artist level. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm still working on this. You have to build structures and ways of working that work for you. Like I know that I need like clean, tidy environments. Like my brain otherwise like just can't cope with that. But you know, I previously would just work, no boundaries. Like boundaries are like so important and so critical. And also for me, like my downtime and my like I think most artists are like this, but like I see myself as like a sponge, and I go around and I'm like, like absorbing all of this stuff, and then I'll feel ready to make something and I just wring myself out, and then I'm this like sad dry little sponge that needs to go around like absorbing everything again. And so if I don't give myself that like time to like refuel my creative juices, so I try to like structure that in, you know, throughout the year, but also like throughout the month as well, so that I'm kind of making sure that I'm like mentally looking after my mental health as well as kind of my creative output, working on my own. But like when you realize like you've not spoken to anybody, you know, and also you live in this like self-critical echo chamber of like hate what I've made or what, you know. So it's, I think it's really good to like step away, reflect, you know, touch grass, speak to somebody.
So how do you organize that? You make sure that
Yeah.
you meet friends in the weeks.
I live in the countryside, which I love, which just feels, you know, it's definitely my cup of tea. It's like dog walks, I go to the gym, I'll meet some of my other like self-employed female friends for like coffees, like speak to Marine, like speak to my parents, speak to my husband, like go do my like hobbies, like go to choir, I go to like my local bookshop, get a new book, reading. Like I just try and make sure that I'm doing all of the things that fill up my cup, so that then like the output is the best it.
That's an important element to keep in mind because as an entrepreneur, many people tell you you're the main asset of your company, so you have to take care of your well-being.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nothing good will happen.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same is and also because you mentioned that often being an artist is a type of personality.
I feel like we all tend to be like perfectionists, hypercritical, and feel the need to like output. And I think when we don't, I think we then feel miserable, even if what we output is rubbish, you know. We just need to put something out there.
So take some time for you
Yeah.
to recharge
Yeah.
and make sure you take care of yourself. You mentioned that it has been harder for female artists. So do you have specific advice for female artists?
I feel reluctant to say anything different than I would to a guy. Like I want you to just be able to like go out there and express yourself kind of honestly and truthfully in the way that you feel is right to you. You may have to put yourself out there a bit more and back yourself a little bit more, because it is still a male dominated field. But I think it could be detrimental to like focus on that in essence and have that as the narrative, and just, you know, because I do really value being one of the female artists who is doing this, but like I also just want to be known as like a great artist. I think it's important to like acknowledge it and be aware that it's going on and definitely challenge these stereotypes, but then also maybe not let it lead you down a path where that's your only focus.
But your experience and your visibility, the fact that your work is focusing a lot on women
Yeah.
gaze and
Yeah.
you are in your works,
Yeah.
and the fact that it is successful
Mhm.
is also already very inspiring, I imagine, for women artists that might think, oh, maybe men won't be interested in my art because it reflects a certain female gaze.
Yeah.
So it's inspiring to see that you found collectors, you found brands to collaborate with, and it can be successful even if your work can be labeled as
Yeah.
feminine.
I feel like I probably have equal male and female collectors as well. So I don't feel like I see a sway in a particular person buying that. I definitely have a more female dominant audience online.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's more like 60-40 online of like a female dominant. But in terms of collectors, it's probably quite even.
Statistics are always good to remind people that this is the reality. Thanks for sharing. To end the conversation, who's the person in the art world that you recommend me to invite to inspire artists?
Oh, okay. So I think you should have a chat with Nat Bowen. She's great. She is a British artist, but she currently lives in Dubai.
A new market. Interesting.
And she does these amazing resin artworks, and it's all to do with like color and emotion and experiences. But she also has, I would say, in the last few years also started doing some kind of more sculptural public art pieces as well. I mean, I'm not saying I know all the female artists, but there's like not that many of us in this like circle who are doing things, but like she's fantastic, and I think that people would get a lot from hearing what she has to say, and I think it would be quite a different perspective to mine as well.
Thank you for the recommendation. And thank you so much for your time and your advice. The generosity of what you shared will be tremendously helpful for the artists.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Have a very nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope that you liked this episode and that you got concrete insights for your personal journey. Follow us on YouTube or your favorite audio platforms to be updated of my next talks with other art market insiders. Goodbye.